You can dwell on the past, recent and remote, for reminders of success to build on.
You can't survive!
Failure to learn from. Legacies to uphold. The history of this conference is now 30 years long and counting, filled with stories of moments of truth.
McNamara, a deep throw! Here's Grove for the win!
But now, the time for remembering ends. The time for surviving begins. In a legendary landmark in New York, another few days, not of recalling, but of reckoning.
Wow! Talk about range, huh?
This time of year, what's done is done.
Oh my goodness!
Because it's lose one and you're done at the Big East Championship.
Look at the celebration! Mullen, a tip of the hat. You can't survive! Hawkins is upset. Look at you here. Some sideline show.
Welcome back to New York City. Tourists from all over the world come to the Big Apple. And there's so much to see and do here, you really want to hang around as long as you can. But 5 teams have already had to leave New York for the Big East Championship, and another will be sent packing today after our second game this afternoon from Madison Square Garden.
Let's go, St. John's, let's go.
Championship week is presented by Dick's Sporting Goods. This is game 2 of 4 second-round games today and tonight from the Big East Championship in New York. It's the 5th-seeded Marquette Golden Eagles taking on the number 13 seed, the hometown team, if you will, the St. John's Red Storm. And yesterday, for the second time in a week, the Red Storm defeated the Georgetown Hoyas. It was by a score of 64-59. Just the second time in the last 6 years the Red Storm have even qualified to play in the Big East Championship, and they pulled off a win over Georgetown, the number 12 seed, who would advance to the second round. Paris Horn leading the Red Storm with 23 as St. John's advances to round 2. Already today, Providence survived against a pesky bunch of Blue Demons to advance to a quarterfinal matchup with Louisville tomorrow. The winner of this gets Villanova. 2 more second round games tonight and 2 more quarterfinals in the night session tomorrow night. Hi, everybody. Dan Schulman and Len Elmore back at Madison Square Garden. You are looking at the Marquette Golden Eagles. They are a man down, as you no doubt have heard, after the injury, the broken foot, ending the season and career of point guard Dominique James. They've lost 4 in a row since then, but we have to keep in mind the opposition they played in those 4 games.
Well, you look at Dominique James, his loss adversely affected Marquette, no question about it. And like an expensive watch, you know, this is a fine-tuned, guard-oriented type of attack. And without Dominique James, they've had to really change their chemistry, and the fate and schedule have been unkind. They've had to run the gauntlet, as they call it, 3 consecutive games against top 10 teams. That was supposed to prove Marquette's staying power, and they were forced to run that gauntlet without their floor leader.
And even the loss by 11 to UConn, the loss by 15 to Pittsburgh, closer than they seem. Marquette had a lead at some point in the second half of all 4 of those games. Now we look to St. John's, and the Red Storm, as you said in our first game today, they play as hard as anybody in the Big East.
Well, they reflect Norm Roberts and his work ethic. They play hard for him, and they've got a couple of guys that have really stepped up. They've been playing without their best player, Anthony Mason Jr., but you've had guys that stepped up and gotten the job done for them when they certainly have needed it, and particularly yesterday.
Take a look at our Star Watch right now, and a couple of guys who may spend some time getting to know one another today. Paris Horn and Jarrell McNeil could be covering one another.
Well, Paris Horn is one of those guys that stepped up for St. John's. 23 against Georgetown yesterday. He's the go-to guy for the Red Storm. And Jarrell McNeil, Player of the Year numbers. He's an outstanding two-way guard.
First team All-Big East performer, Jarrell McNeil. The starting lineups now, but we begin with St. John's, and we go to the backcourt for this team that was 16-16, 6-12 in Big East play. Malik Booth at the point, and Paris Horn is the go-to scorer for the Red Storm. Up front, DJ Kennedy, a very talented performer, and both Sean Evans and Justin Burrell had some huge plays in the win over Georgetown yesterday. For Marquette, a 3-guard look. You know McNeil, you know Matthews. We'll tell you about Maurice Acker. He is filling in for the injured Dominique James. Up front, the undersized, underappreciated, underrated Lazar Hayward, along with Dwight Burke. It's the Papa John's starting lineups for St. John's and Marquette. This is going to be a colorful affair here with St. John's Radiant in red, and Marquette breaking out the bright yellow here this afternoon. Do not adjust your set.
I'm going to break out my shades in a minute, man.
There are some Marquette fans in the house, but this is one of the two homes, the primary home for the St. John's Red Storm. They also play, of course, at Carnesecca Arena, the former Alumni Hall, and there are some Johnny fans in the house here today. The winner of this will take on Villanova in a quarterfinal game tomorrow afternoon here on ESPN. Underway, Marquette with the first possession.
Again, we talk about the loss of Dominique James for Marquette. This is a team that shoots around 46% from the field, but in those last 4 games during the gauntlet, they shot just 38%. A lot of guys trying to do maybe a little bit too much in the wake of the loss of James. They got to be able to settle down, play with each other, and kind of adjust that chemistry.
Started Big East play 9-0. Nice dunk down. Hayward misses it. That is Marquette at its best. Penetrate and dish it off to an open guy for a high percentage look. First-year head coach at Marquette, Buzz Williams, an assistant last year under Tom Crean, a head coach for 1 year prior to that at the University of New Orleans. A well-traveled man who's been an assistant at a variety of colleges. Wesley Matthews misses his first look. 2 pretty good looks for the Golden Eagles, but they come up empty.
And again, when I talk about chemistry regarding Marquette, I'm not talking about interaction between players. I'm talking about the things that they run. Dominique James was so athletic, gave them multiple opportunities to do things with him. Maurice Acker, pretty good point guard, but not nearly the athlete.
And an offensive foul on Paris Horn, driving into the teeth of the defense. So Norm Roberts a little frustrated that his best players picked up a foul in the first minute of the game for Coach Roberts, his 5th season manning the Red Storm. They are 64-83, and there have been some tough moments for this program, but one thing they have done is defeated a ranked team at least once every year. They got Notre Dame earlier this year when the Irish were in the top 10. And Wesley Matthews hits the deck hard as he is fouled by DJ Kennedy, an inadvertent trip.
Well, you talk about Paris Horn getting that first early foul. Norm Roberts hope it doesn't dampen his enthusiasm on the defensive end. And he's so important, averaging about 16 points, 5 rebounds over the last several games. He's the guy that they really go to when they need offense.
Matthews a bit shaken up, but all right after that foul. And here is McNeil, a great defender, good shooter, good distributor. Fights as hard, plays as hard as anybody in the conference, and has not missed a single minute of time in the Golden Eagles' last 5 games. Acker, and he knocks down the jumper. This young man is a junior from Hazel Crest, Illinois, a transfer from Ball State, a childhood friend and teammate of Jarrell McNeil, and a guy who's gone from 12 minutes a game led to 30-some minutes a game since James was hurt.
And that takes time to adjust. That's a different role.
That'll be a block. That'll be on Hayward. Had that gone the other way, it would have been the second on Kennedy.
Well, DJ Kennedy is a slasher. He had 14 against Georgetown yesterday. And he's the kind of guy, again, that you want to back off just a little bit, force him to knock down some jump shots.
And there's Louis Carnesecca, the former coach of St. John's, led him to the Final Four and so many great successes in his time. His name hangs on in the rafters here at Madison Square Garden. And again, Alumni Hall now named Carnesecca Arena, and one of the great all-time St. John's players and one of the great shooters any of us has ever had the pleasure of watching play basketball, Chris Mullin.
Yeah, Chris could definitely fill it up. I mean, he's a solid player not only on the college level, but certainly in the pro level. Played up to his potential. One of the hardest working guys that I've known. But look at Louis without the sweater, man.
That doesn't look right, huh?
Looks like another businessman out here.
Screen by Hayward. Matthews, one of the most improved players in the Big East this year. McNeil looking for the contact. He found it, and a foul on Justin Burrell.
Well, in trying to right the ship after 4 consecutive losses, there's no back down by Marquette. They're going to the basket.
You want to trace the progress of this young man over his 4 years. McNeil is a freshman and made the all-rookie team in the Big East. As a sophomore, second-team All-Big East and Defensive Player of the Year. Last year surrendered the defensive award to Hashim Thabit, but repeated on the second team. This year, first-team All-Big East. And a guy who until the last couple of weeks when Marquette started losing was being thought of as a legitimate contender for Player of the Year in Big East, and a guy who you said just a short while ago in our first game, you thought he still should have been up there in the running.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have to discount performance based upon the loss of Dominic James. It altered the chemistry, the attack.
Nice move on the baseline, but no finish for Sean Evans. He follows it up and misses again. Evans was sensational yesterday against Georgetown with 12 points and 13 rebounds. Burke, a pretty good adjustment in midair by a guy not known for his offensive ability.
Yeah, Dwight Burke is the muscle inside, provides the physical play, setting screens, rebounding. But anytime you get some points for him, that's a bonus.
It's a very small Marquette team. Burke listed at 6'8", plays the center. Hayward listed at 6'6", more like 6'5", plays power forward, and occasionally has to play in the middle when Burke goes to the bench.
And that's why they focus on good defensive positioning, blocking out off the glass against larger opponents.
Malik Booth with 7 on the shot clock. Sneaks inside, stepped out of bounds. Dominic James now becoming head cheerleader for the Marquette Golden Eagles. Look at the numbers for Matthews and McNeil since James went out, taking more shots out of necessity and having to work harder to get those shots without James initiating the offense.
And when you talk about taking more shots out of necessity, I think that was their belief that they had to do that. When in effect, they probably need to play a little bit more with their guys, you know, get some more easier shots for guys like Dwight Burke. Certainly for guys like Jimmy Butler inside.
McNeil for 3. Great rebound by Butler, who's been coming on game by game. A junior college transfer, again, a little bit undersized at about 6'5", playing inside more than outside, but it works as hard as everybody else in the gold jerseys.
And Dan, you're absolutely right. Game by game, that's the key. Butler getting more time, been inserted in different situations at an earlier point during the game. And those are the guys that need to step up, increase production, not necessarily McNeil or Matthews. They don't have to necessarily go out and force things. They got to be able to play with guys like that, help them play to their potential.
Acker out. David Kubian, who was a forgotten man until the James injury basically forced him back into the rotation. Kubian comes in. He's not a point guard, though. Now McNeil, in all facets of the game, switches to the point.
Yeah, Kubian had a much different role under Tom Crean, under Buzz Williams. Kubian probably had to play the point, as you mentioned, not a point guard.
Horn misses the 3. Rebound Matthews.
Kubian, a nice spot-up jump shooter. Guess you had to be a little more versatile to get in the Buzz Williams lineup.
6-point lead early for the Golden Eagles. The Storm without a field goal almost 4 minutes into the game. Booth off to Kennedy, fouled by McNeil, and all the folks in the blue and gold wanted a clean block on that play.
Well, you talk about Jarrell McNeil on the offensive end, but as I said, outstanding two-way guard. And you look at the steal and the push, and Booth, a true point guard for St. John's. That looked like a good block from this angle.
DJ Kennedy at the line. McNeil's the guy who takes as much pride in his defense as he does in his offense.
Well, just the hustle back right here, follows the play. Kind of reached over, but it didn't look like he made any contact, even with the head. But again, the officials have a different angle, and their call counts.
1 of 2 for Kennedy, a high school teammate on a state championship team with Pittsburgh's DeJuan Blair. Just think of the mileage that McNeil puts on, playing 40 minutes every game, playing both guard spots, handling the ball, their best defensive player, taking the most shots. Kubian leaves it short, bodies on the floor. Here comes St. John's. Evans baseline. Loose ball to the Golden Eagles. Almost 4.5 minutes in, and the Red Storm have yet to make a field goal. Matthews the kick. Matthews gets it back, wide open for 3. Butler off to Burke for 2. Jimmy Butler, the blue-collar guy right now for the Golden Eagles.
And Jimmy Butler making stuff happen inside, but how about that move again by Burke, showing even more versatility, changing position with the ball, took the contact and finished strong.
And over his scoring average already, averages under 3 points per game. Knocked out of bounds by McNeil. Nice grab made by Commissioner Mike Tranghese to take us to a timeout here at the Garden with Marquette on top early. Back here at Madison Square Garden, where Luke Carnesecca had so many incredible moments as head coach of the then St. John's Redmen, now the Red Storm. Sitting alongside Brian Mahoney, another former St. John's coach, Chris Mullen there as well. You go back to 1986 in the Big East Championship game, and it was Luke Carnesecca's St. John's team that went toe-to-toe with Syracuse, and it took clutch plays on both ends of the floor in the waning seconds for a victor to be decided.
As the defense has caused them to run some clock. It's going.
Rowan hits it with 9 seconds to go. Syracuse runs up the floor with no timeouts. The Pearl blocked, and it's over. Willie Glass standing on the rim, signifying the Redmen are number 1.
It's the 30th season of the Big East Championship, back in one of the earlier heydays of this conference, Len, back in the mid-'80s. Georgetown, Syracuse, St. John's. I mean, St. John's deserved mention in the same breath as the Hoyas and the Orange.
Well, that's the stuff that the legends in the Big East are made of. And how about that dance by Louis? I think they got patented and maybe made a disco dance out of that, the little pirouette.
St. John's, more often than not recently, has not even been invited to this tournament, and of course that's doubly painful for them because this is their home court. They're here this year. They won a game this year, beating Georgetown yesterday. The winner of this game will advance to a quarterfinal matchup tomorrow with Villanova.
Well, as I said so often when St. John's wasn't here, and the same thing at times with Rutgers and Seton Hall, holding a party on your block and you're not invited. Well, St. John started partying yesterday.
Well, speak as someone who is from this area. How do Rutgers, Seton Hall, and St. John's get back to where they were? How do they compete in the recruiting game with so many other schools in the Big East?
I think it's going to be difficult, but again, it really comes down to success. It comes down to success and having a vision that you can demonstrate that you've got a future, because the Big East pretty much sells itself. And coming here and being able to, you know, kind of demonstrate your skills on this stage is attractive enough to anybody, not just in New York, but around the country.
Hayward called for a travel, turns it over. The 3 New York area schools finished 11th, 13th, and 15th this year in the 16-team Big East. Do you see all 3, though, moving in the right direction?
Yeah, I certainly do. I mean, you look at Seton Hall, they're here. Obviously, Rutgers with a tough game against Notre Dame. But, you know, they've got some players, particularly Mike Rosario, that are starting to establish Rutgers as a place to be, demonstrating that they have a future. And, of course, St. John's, they've played hard without their best player, Anthony Mason. You know, they've got some bright futures ahead of them if they can continue to keep that intact.
A great effort defensively by Paris Horn, not willing to concede anything, and it got Hayward from behind.
Yeah, Lazar Hayward, that last step probably wasn't really as explosive as he's capable of being. Didn't think that the defender was close enough.
Burke returns for Hayward. McNeil can't gather in the inbounds pass, and Marquette turns it over. St. John's still has not made a field goal. We're 6 minutes in. Now they have. Malik Booth rattles it home.
Malik Booth, the true point guard on this team, missed 9 games in the middle of the season because of his thumb. Really hadn't gotten himself back.
5'9" point guard from Queens, attended Christ the King.
And he's just starting out to round into shape.
McNeil off the screen buries the 15-footer. McNeil averaging 20 points per game this season. Foul and scoop won't go. Here comes Butler. Acker has returned at the point. McNeil on the wing, and he traveled.
But you can see the pace Marquette wants to set right now. As soon as they get the rebound, they're pushing it up. Not waiting for a whole lot of half court when there are opportunities to work one-on-one.
These two teams met once during the regular season. It was Valentine's Day at the Bradley Center in Milwaukee. Marquette winning by 14. They forced 24 turnovers in that game. 14 of them were outright steals, and that was the biggest difference in the game. Marquette does like to pressure. Evans steps in, misses the jumper. Loose ball back to Evans, and he lost it again.
Well, you saw a good example of how Marquette plays defense. Below the waist, they're going after the ball. They're digging and stripping. You know, not a shot blocking team, averaging only 3 blocks per game, but they'll certainly go after it.
Well, Rob Thomas went after it right now, and he was fortunate to land it amongst some some fans, some St. John's fans, to soften the fall there a little bit.
Yeah, Rob Thomas, the victim of Maurice Acker digging and getting the ball below the waist. If you're going to play against a team like Marquette, you're a big man going after offensive glass. Once you go get it, you have it above your shoulders, above your head. You got to keep it there.
Well, Thomas, a great story. Folks around the Big East may have heard the story before. A young man who, at the age of 17, while in prep school in Connecticut, confronted and read at a 5th or 6th grade ability and wrote to a teacher saying, please, I need your help. I need to learn how to read and write better. Has stuck with it, has dealt with it, has improved, has gotten into college, has worked incredibly hard at that aspect. Now, take into account also he suffered a knee injury that the trainer of St. John's says is the worst he has ever seen in 27 years on the job. Thomas also grew up in abject poverty and lived on the subways at time length, so as not to be taken away by social services. I mean, this is a young man who has dealt with more than most of us will deal with in a lifetime, and is proven to be a success both on the court and in life right now at St. John's.
Well, absolutely a picture of perseverance, and just demonstrates there are no lost causes. And for every guy who comes to college basketball thinking, I'm just going to stay a year, I don't need to do anything else, I'll go play in professional ranks, they're going to understand the much bigger picture, and Rob Thomas can probably tell them a few things about that.
Burrell in for Evans, who just picked up his second foul. That is a loss for St. John's. That's a big body, 6'8", 250. Averages about 10.7 rebounds per game, and he is done for a while now after that second foul. Hayward, bounce pass, good position inside McNeil, blocked by Horn. And Horn woofing a little bit, or Matthews rather, Horn woofing a little bit at Matthews after that block. He is pumped up.
Well, Paris Horn again at 6'3", doing a nice job against the taller Wesley Matthews on the post up. I think Matthews probably would have thought better of just going straight up. But the woofing part, I don't know, man. Wesley Matthews puts up some numbers. You don't want to rile him.
Off the head of Booth, saved by Thomas, and here come the Red Storm. Down by 7, only 4 points, only 1 field goal in almost 8 minutes for St. John's. Rebound by Matthews. So much experience for Marquette, but lost a lot of it obviously with James being hurt, but with McNeil and Matthews, you're talking about guys who have been starters for just about their entire career. Hayward as a junior has been a huge performer now for 3 years for the Golden Eagles as well. Here's Burke, way long, and it's St. John's ball. Well, they're having trouble putting the ball in the basket right now as Marquette has an early 7-point lead on the Red Storm here in Midtown Manhattan. Well, you don't have a conference of this magnitude without great leadership, and Mike Tranghese stepping down at the end of this season, the longtime commissioner of the Big East Conference, honored by many of the athletic directors and presidents of the 16 member institutions of the Big East with a nice ceremony at halftime of our first game today. Dave Gavitt conceived it, built it. Mike Tranghese took it to another level, and he's standing by with our Alan Hopkins.
Thanks, Dan. Commissioner Tranghese, first of all, how surprised were you about that halftime ceremony in Game 1?
Very surprised. I had no idea.
How'd they keep a secret from you?
They keep a lot of things from me, believe me.
Obviously, you've done so much for this conference. What is some of your favorite moments and memories of being the commissioner here, particularly in regards to the Big East Championship?
Well, every time I come into this building, I get goosebumps. It's the greatest place to play. But, you know, there have been so many great championships. In '84, Georgetown's national championship team, buzzer beaters in '86 and '96, and hopefully there's going to be some more this year.
This year, the first year you expanded the tournament, all 16 teams in. There was some pushback, but DePaul won the 16th seed. Does that win validate having all the tournament teams come here?
Well, what I think validated is how hard the kids played, and we had a pretty good turnout for a Tuesday afternoon doubleheader.
And what about the NCAA tournament? I know you've had quite a bit of say over the years. How strong do you think the tournament or the committee will consider how many teams in this conference?
Well, I think we'll get in whoever we deserve. The committee's got good people on it, and I don't worry about them doing their job. We'll get the right teams in. Then we have to go play.
Commissioner Tranghese, thank you so much, and best of luck in retirement. Thank you, Dan.
All right, Alan, thank you very much. Mike Tranghese, he is here every moment for 5 days. He watches every second of every game, and he has been so instrumental in the growth of this conference. Now 16 teams, 3 potential #1 seeds and certainly 3 legitimate national title contenders. This has been an event, Len, you and I have been fortunate to be a part of for many years now.
That's right. You say Mike is here all the time, and that is true. And it's the interest and the input. It shows. It's what makes this tournament so terrific.
I don't think they keep as much from him as he would like us to believe, by the way. Hayward inside. Marquette leading by 9. Lazar Hayward, a junior from Buffalo. And if you want to ask about Hayward's stick-to-itiveness and determination, he was on the rowing team in Buffalo. I mean, that is not an easy job. He said they would start indoors February, March, and row right through the end of school in June. He did it to keep himself in shape. You row in Buffalo, you're a determined young man.
You do anything outside Buffalo. In the springtime, you're determined.
And Jarrell McNeil got a piece of the arm, evidently. He is called for the foul. The second on McNeil, Marquette's most indispensable player.
And here's where the loss of Dominique James affects the Marquette depth chart. If McNeil has to come out, you know, they obviously have a couple of reliable scorers in Hayward and Wesley Matthews, but they don't have that dominant guy who, for a stretch of period of time, can take over.
So little depth. Sometimes Buzz Williams has no choice but to play his veterans through their foul trouble. Here is Thomas Jasolonis, a 6'11 senior from Lithuania, taking the place of Thomas.
And you picked up on it right away. I mean, there's no one coming off the bench standing near the scorer's table. You know, with that kind of experience as a senior, you got to know how to play. Problem is, many times he's guarding the toughest offensive player on the other team, so he's definitely got to exercise discretion.
And he's had Paris Horn as the guy he's guarded for much of today's game already. Nice kick to Acker, extra pass to Matthews, one more time to Butler, and back to McNeil, a team that always shares the ball. Matthews from the corner. And St. John's had that rebound locked up. They had the ball. 2 of them were surrounding the ball, and neither one really went for it, and it winds up a held ball. And Marquette will get it on the arrow. St. John's, excuse me, will get it on the arrow.
Yeah, I think St. John's kind of made out a little bit because I believe that was Paris Horn on the floor for the ball. He used his feet to corral the ball to him, and that's a no-no.
Horn to inbound it. Kubion in for McNeil. So we'll see how long McNeil stays out. Goes out at the 10:06 mark with his second foul. And now an even heavier load falls on the likes of Wesley Matthews and Lazar Hayward. St. John's has made 1 field goal in better than 10 minutes, and there's a travel on Kennedy. 1 for 9 with 7 turnovers for the Red Storm.
They're only down 7, but this is a prime opportunity for St. John's. They got to be able to execute a little bit better. Can't turn the ball over in situations right after the other team's best scorer comes out. You got to make them pay.
Now a second round game for the Big East Championship here at Madison Square Garden. Deflected. It'll stay with Marquette. That's the right call. The Red Storm don't like it, but it was deflected. Providence defeating DePaul in our first game today to advance to a quarterfinal matchup with Louisville tomorrow. The winner of this game gets Villanova tomorrow. 2 more second round games tonight, 2 more quarterfinals tomorrow night, and all of those games right here on ESPN. Passed up to 3, penetrates off to clear. Shot clock at 7. Acker will take a long 2. Uncontested offensive rebound, put back, Jimmy Butler.
Not only was an opportunity for Jimmy Butler to get in because no one put a body on him. You got to grab it with both hands, Wesley.
They were lucky there. Horn picks it up after his errant pass and goes the distance.
I was going to say on the other end with Matthews, not only did no one block him out, there was contact. St. John's once again dodged one. That should have been a 3-point play. But Matthews had a chance for a steal, tried to do it with one hand. You got to go after the ball with 2 hands, whether it's in the post or outside when you have a clear steal. Got to get it under control.
This is an alignment that Buzz Williams has not used much this year, with Acker and Kubion in the game together, brought about by the injury to James, the career-ending injury to Dominique James, collegiate career, and the 2 fouls today on Jarrell McNeil. Kennedy forcing the issue, doesn't get the roll.
And that's what we mean by chemistry issues. You'll be able to adapt.
Acker to Kubion. Knocked back out, but into the hands of Matthews. Kubion again. Wild shot that goes.
Well, Kubion's aggressive right now. He hadn't gotten much time throughout this season. Only averaged 9 minutes a game, where in the past he was getting double digits, shooting threes, etc.
Dominic James liked what he saw from his teammate David Kubion, who has extended the Marquette lead to 9. Well, when your guy comes off the bench and doesn't get a ton of minutes, you want to make your presence felt immediately. Kubion does that. That's the kind of shot, though, and if it doesn't go, he's probably back on the bench.
Well, you know that. You know he gets a quick thumb. But here's a guy, again, in the first couple years, career average 37% from beyond the arc. He's a terrific three-point shooter, just 9 of 30 coming into this game, playing only 9 minutes a game. So he's got to get his confidence back. He's got to get his rhythm back. And going to the basket hard like that is a way to kick it in gear.
Hayward with a clean steal. Buzz Williams stealing some minutes without Jarrell McNeil right now. He's got 2 fouls, but getting quality play out of Acker, Kubion. And Marquette maintaining this lead. St. John's just awful offensively so far today. Hayward with a quickness advantage, giving up size to Yasolonis. Matthews. Butler. 5 on the clock. Matthews got to make it happen. And the follow is there for Hayward.
I'll tell you what, a lot of contact under the basket, and I think it does affect the shooters. Matthews got hit again by Yasolonis. Call for the foul, didn't get it, but it all worked out for Marquette. Marquette continues to go to the basket, continues to try to put pressure on St. John's.
More than half of Marquette's points, 10 of the 19, second chance points so far today. It's Quincy Roberts, number 10, into the game now for St. John's in the backcourt. No relation to Coach Norm Roberts. Kennedy with the shot clock running down. The lefty elevates. Rebound Matthews, getting it done at both ends of the floor.
Frustrating thing for Norm Roberts is that his team is getting good shots. And they're getting it against a defense that's 15th in field goal percentage defense. That's Marquette.
Wesley Matthews for 3. No James because of the injury. No McNeil because of the foul trouble. But Wesley Matthews answering the need for Marquette. Back at Madison Square Garden, second round action from the Big East Championship, a part of Championship Week presented by Dick's Sporting Goods with Len Elmore and Alan Hopkins. I'm Dan Schulman. Glad you're with us. Marquette leading St. John's by 14 here in the first half. Earlier today, a spirited affair between Providence and DePaul. DePaul led most of the game until a late 15-1 run by the Friars in the second half. Providence advances to take on Louisville in the first quarterfinal tomorrow. The winner of this game gets Villanova. Tonight, the Mountaineers and the Irish, the Orange and the Pirates, with Pittsburgh and UConn standing by for tomorrow night.
Well, that flash of light that crossed the Providence eyes in the second half woke them up. And they started playing basketball together. Put a lot of pressure on DePaul. DePaul couldn't make any field goals pretty much down the stretch until the game was kind of out of reach for them.
Will Walker and Dar Tucker combined for 61 points for DePaul, but a big games for Sherrod Curry and Uwemi Efijuku offset that. As Providence beats DePaul 83-74. St. John's so far in this game 2 for 12 from the field with 8 turnovers. So you're talking about 20 possessions with really only 2 of them ending successfully, other than a couple of trips to the free throw line.
And 10 second chance points by Marquette. They continue to battle the board. And we talk about playing hard with St. John's, but it's not enough to play hard. You got to be able to execute on both ends.
Horn elevates. This is the jumper kept alive by Thomas. Out of bounds to St. John's as we go to immediate timeout here at Madison Square Garden. The Red Storm looking to find a way to get going offensively. Marquette has put the clamps on them so far and having 22-8 lead. The Marquette Golden Eagles without one of their big three, their seniors. Dominique James broke his foot a couple of weeks ago. His season and his Marquette career are over. Last week he was asked about his emotions following that injury.
It's hard just discussing, you know, I mean, that's my family. And not ever playing on the court with, I mean, all my teammates, but obviously, you know, guys like Jarrell McNeil and Wesley Matthews. And Coach Bell's on the sideline. You couldn't ask for anything better. The support has been unbelievable. And it's just not from my teammates, just from the whole Marquette family.
And keep in mind, since James was out, they have lost 4 in a row. But also keep in mind, they were against Connecticut, Louisville, Pittsburgh, and Syracuse. 2 of them on the road, 1 of them in overtime. So they're 23-8. They were looking like a team that could have been, I don't know, maybe a 3 seed or something like that before the injury. How much does the injury hurt?
I think when you say hurt them, I mean, obviously they're still in the tournament. Obviously they're going to probably get a top 5 seed with probably more like 4 or 5. But what it comes down to is that gauntlet prior to James's injury would have tested Marquette's staying power. Had they won a couple of those games, it probably would have boosted them pretty well as far as seeding's concerned. Right now, the tournament selection committee is going to look at the type of team that they are without Dominique James, and that's what's probably going to drop them a little bit. But hey, you still got to win games, man. That's what if it's 1 or 2 lines, fine, you live with that. You still have to win games.
Malik Booth limping as he comes up the court for St. John's, number 3 in red. Marquette the 5 seed and hoping to advance and play Villanova, the number 4 seed tomorrow, a team that the Golden Eagles split with during the regular season. E.J. Kennedy lines up with 3. Matthews had it and lost it. Thomas off the glass, too strong. Marquette ball.
At that time, Burke was the immovable force, standing under the basket, didn't give up any ground. Forced that miss, and on the other end, I think Wesley Matthews got away with an extra step, but nevertheless got the call.
Foul on Booth, his first, will send Matthews to the line. Let's take another look and count the steps.
You know, Marquette 1, 2, not bad. Kind of looked like a little shuffle right after he touched it, but nevertheless, you talk about Marquette, the things that they still do well with or without Dominique James, playing defense and getting the ball in transition. When I talk about defense, not so much the solid defense that's reflected by field goal percentage defense, because they're 15th in the conference, but the type that creates steals and opportunities to run out in the open floor. And that's what it hurts you, scoring in transition.
Well, right now, extended minutes for the Golden Eagles. We talk about the big 3 a lot, and that does a disservice to Lazar Hayward. There are 4 great players on this Marquette team. James is hurt. McNeil's on the bench in foul trouble. Hayward is not in the game right now. So really, Matthews is the only one of the 4 key guys who's been in the game at all for Marquette in the last few minutes. Yet St. John's isn't getting anywhere.
And this is a great example. When Dominique James first got hurt, Matthews and McNeil apparently took it upon themselves to take more shots to try to lift their team. But in reality, they would have been better served by allowing the guys off the bench, the Jimmy Butlers, the David Kubians, Maurice Ackers, to get more involved in the flow. Maybe tighten up the defense a little bit. That certainly would have kind of picked up some of the slack created by the loss of Dominique James. They're doing it today.
Horn misses. St. John's can't buy one. 2 for 16 from the floor.
And as I mentioned, got to be frustrating for Norm Roberts because his team, they're getting open looks. Remember, they're still a 43% field goal shooting team and just 31% from 3. So not exactly lighting it up night in, night out.
Matthews draws another foul. Foul on Kennedy, his second. Meanwhile, for Norm Roberts, a guy who says his dream job was always coaching at St. John's, wanted to play at St. John's, didn't have quite that ability. This is his 5th year as the head man of the Red Storm. You can see a losing record, but this season was an improvement. They're 500 right now. They were 6-12 in the conference, which was a step up. They got to the Big East Championship. They won a game yesterday. So slowly but surely, it appears this program is headed in the right direction.
Only their second appearance in the last 5 years in this Big East Championship. But again, they've been able to play competitively without their best player, Anthony Mason Jr. Had foot surgery, out for the year. They've played a number of games without their starting point guard, Malik Booth. So they've had to kind of cut and paste in the backcourt to try to find the right combination.
And generally speaking, start 5 sophomores, right? Again, one of the youngest teams, just like we talked about with DePaul, one of the youngest teams in the league. Nice move by Horn. Nothing dropping for St. John's. Nearing the final 4 minutes of the first half, so 16 minutes of action, and St. John's has made 2 shots from the field. Acker up to Matthews, plenty of time on the shot clock. And Matthews looking like a guy who's feeling he's having to do it all by himself, but Hayward's back on the floor, and again cleans up the mess.
Well, Lazar Hayward, you mentioned it, kind of floats under the radar. Very versatile, got inside-out capability. Kind of guy that can be a nightmare matchup with big teams and with teams that are small across the front line.
Hayward, a guy who favored baseball more than a basketball until his growth spurt and then turned to basketball on a full-time basis. Marquette calls a timeout with a 27-8 lead. Dominique James, a de facto assistant coach right now on this team after the foot injury, the broken bone that has ended his Marquette career.
Well, again, you talk about Marquette and you think of them as a small team. Lazar Hayward at 6'6", with Jarrell McNeil and Wesley Matthews out there, you know, kind of establishing himself a little bit. You know, you've got those 3 guys are the bulk of the rebounding. But once again, it comes down guys like Jimmy Butler able to kind of use quickness and get position. And that's Butler's game. That's where he excels. And there's Hayward right there. It's all about getting to the spots quicker. You know, then using a little bit of size and strength to be successful. And that's what Marquette's been able to do throughout the year, let alone tonight or today.
9 offensive rebounds for Marquette versus 10 defensive rebounds for St. John's. You've got to protect your glass, your own defensive board, at a much better clip than St. John's is doing today.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about playing hard, but it's more than just playing hard, as we mentioned. You've got to be able to execute. You got to be able to execute the little things, the fundamentals. You know, St. John's with an awful lot of effort out there, but sometimes it's wasted because they're not focusing the effort where it needs to be.
McNeil is back with his 2 fouls. Hayward back off to Acker. Back to Hayward. 15-footer, good. Nice ball movement by the Golden Eagles.
Yeah, against the 2-3 zone. Quick ball movement. Never allowed the defense to get back into position.
Hayward with 8. He's got as many points as St. John's has. And Marquette is on a 14-0 run.
And there's that playing below the waist again with the strip.
And Booth tried to save it. He threw it off Acker, but then I think the ball came back and hit Booth again before it went out of bounds, and the officials are going to confer. And we will sort it out when we come back. 2:37 to go. Great effort by Booth. 29-8, Marquette. All right, John, thank you. One of the games the guys will talk about at halftime was the first game here today. You're looking at Marquette dominate St. John's right now. In our first game today, Providence beat DePaul, though it wasn't easy. Providence advancing to a quarterfinal matchup against Louisville tomorrow. Wayne Efijuku, one of the stars of the day for the Friars earlier today. Here is the post-game comment from Keno Davis, the head coach of Providence. I think we have done enough that we will be strongly considered. We are squarely on the bubble. I don't think it will hurt us if we lose to Louisville. Now, he is the coach of the team, but I think most people feel that Providence probably needs to beat Louisville if they're going to secure an enlargement. What do you think?
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. I think, again, it's all about perception. You know, here's one of those situations where you have to win. Beating DePaul was not a situation other than you got to beat a team you're supposed to beat. Here's one of those must-win situations here where perception is, what are you going to do in tournament?
Yep.
And maybe if they don't beat them, maybe if it's a close game down the wire, they'll delegates are on consideration, but I certainly don't believe that if they lay an egg that they're going to get consideration. I can't believe that.
Hayward into double figures. He's now outscored St. John's. 18 minutes, 2 field goals, 8 points for the Johnnies. And a foul from behind by Butler. Well, unless things change in the next couple of minutes, the Red Storm will set a record you don't want to hold. Fewest points and a half in a Big East championship game. They've got 8 right now, and Georgetown scored 14 in a game against Seton Hall.
And you just wonder if St. John's kind of used it up both emotionally and even somewhat physically in their win against Georgetown yesterday. I'm not one of those believers that your second game in 2 nights or 2 days really wears you down. But nevertheless, it just seems as though that just by inches, St. John's not able to knock any shots down. That was more than inches right there.
Yeah, that's right. That was a couple feet.
There you go.
Glass and good. Justin Burrell. The Red Storm fans getting back into it. A rare bucket. If only Chris Mullen had some eligibility left.
Sure, Chris Mullen scored this many points in his sleep.
31-10. Butler will stay with Marquette. Remember, Marquette has lost 4 in a row entering this game, all against ranked teams, all without Dominique James. And still a terrific season for the Golden Eagles, 23-8, 12-6 in the league. They were 12-2 in the Big East heading into that game with Connecticut when James got hurt about 3 minutes in.
We attribute some of St. John's problems to the Marquette defense. First of all, the pace of this game, Marquette's been able to change it at will. And then secondly, they've been out there pressuring a little bit, getting up challenging shooters.
I think Wesley Matthews knew that. I'm sorry, I knew that one was going in. He was right in front of us, and he posed. He watched it. He knew from release that one was going in.
Well, shooters always know. That's good defense right there. St. John's has had its share of open looks, but by the same token, Marquette has pressured enough.
And an easy run out. Hayward to Butler, and Marquette getting anything they want at the expense of St. John's right now. Final seconds of an anemic first half for the Red Storm. Another miss. They are 3 for 22 from the floor and a foul. And as Matthews got tripped and hits the deck hard for the second time today, the foul on Paris Horn. That'll be his second.
It's his second. Team's ninth.
Well, this is one of those games, I think, as we mentioned, after losing 4 in a row, Marquette searching for combinations that start to play extremely well, with the loss of Dominique James, but also searching for pretty much getting that mojo back, getting that swagger back. And I think in a game like this, not only do they expect to win, but when you win so convincingly, and let's face it, the game's not over, I know, but doesn't look good for St. John's, but you win convincingly like that, you start to believe in yourselves again, and you believe in the guys that are on the floor. And that's what Marquette needed more than anything else.
The lowest scoring half in Big East championship history. 10 points for the St. John's Red Storm. Rarely are coaches ever truly happy. We'll see if Buzz Williams feels good about the way his team has played. Here he is with Alan Hopkins.
I think he is feeling very good. You're able to hold St. John's to a tournament record low, 10 points in the first half. Why were you so successful defensively?
I think we did a much better job guarding their ball screens. When we played at our place, they had set 88 ball screens. Yesterday against Georgetown, they set 55 ball screens. We've done a good job of ball screen defensive coverages, and what they do best is get offensive rebounds. I don't know how many they had, but they haven't scored any on offensive putbacks, except for the one that Burrell scored there at the end of the half. So ball screen defense and preventing them from getting offensive rebounds is what's allowed us to play. Whether it's a record or not, I don't know. We played 20. We got to get 20 more.
All right, thanks, Coach. We'll see you in the second half. Back to you, Dan.
Buzz Williams, the head coach of Marquette, a man who pays attention to detail, and his team is up 38-10 at the half over St. John's. Time now to go to the studio for the Cisco halftime report as we send you to John Saunders, Hubert Davis, and Digger Phelps. Guys. Welcome back to New York Championship Week, presented by Dick's Sporting Goods. We are at the Big East Championship for the 27th year in a row at Madison Square Garden. And never before in the history of this event has one team scored so few points in one half. But we're not going to focus on the negative. We're going to focus on the positive. Tell us what Marquette did well in that first half.
Well, Marquette, they shot the ball pretty well inside the three-point arc. And one of the reasons they were able to hit the offensive glass and do a terrific job. Lazar Haywood, a young man, as I said, who has kind of floated under the radar, having a terrific year. He's one of those guys on the post-up and then on the follow-up. He's done a nice job quietly working on a double-double, 10 points, 6 rebounds in that half. And he's also got the ability to shoot the ball from mid-range and long range. So really, that's the positive stuff. Marquette just needs to continue to accentuate that positive. And if you're Norm Roberts, the only thing you can say is keep shooting.
And a look at the Guinness first half stats tells an ugly story for St. John's. 3 for 22. 3 makes in 22 tries, 10 turnovers, dominated on the glass. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong for the Red Storm in the first half. Marquette on a 4-game losing streak, all against ranked opposition, all without Dominic James. Turning it around here today.
And again, the perimeter defense pretty good. Marquette 2 of 9. But if you can't put the ball in the basket, you can't expect much.
Missed shot by Hayward. Here come the Red Storm with numbers if they hurry. Marquette gets back, though, quickly.
Nowhere in this stat sheet did it say anything about ball screens. Buzz Williams knows more than anybody regarding how his team is playing. And, you know, that's an excellent point. But St. John still got some good looks. There's no denying that. They just haven't been able to knock anything down.
Booth miss. Burrell with a weak side rebound. Up strong, too strong.
See, that's the kind of stuff we're talking about. You get point blank opportunities. You got to get closer than that. You got to draw iron.
Close out there on Hayward by Booth. Buzz Williams, a guy who's generated a little bit of notoriety this year for being very precise, a little bit obsessive compulsive perhaps in terms of the way he likes things. He's a very regimented guy. There's a block. Here comes St. John's. Kennedy one-on-one with McNeil. Count the bucket. Hitting the deck hard. Matthews again, but he's okay. So if Buzz Williams says they set 88 ball screens in this game and 55 ball screens in that game, I believe him. I'm not going to doubt him for 1 second.
He brought the abacus out to make sure of that. When you talk about insult to injury, terrific hustle on the goaltend by Matthews, and then he takes a hard fall. No good deed goes unpunished.
I think one thing folks who have watched Marquette over the last few weeks will know, even without James, there is no quit in this team, although they're struggling here to start the second half. Horn elevates for the jam.
That's one way to make sure you put the ball down.
6 now for Horn. This is a Marquette team down 20, up 20. Nip and tuck affair doesn't matter. This is a team that does not feel sorry for itself, and they continue to give a maximum effort at all times as McNeil draws the foul.
Well, Paris Horn just 1 of 8 in the first half. Kind of made sure of this one. And you can hear the reverberation, feel it, and everything else.
McNeil at the line for a couple now for Marquette. You see the word Al just on the upper chest portion of the jerseys. That's in memory of the great Al McGuire, who led the Marquette then Warriors to the national championship back in 1977. It's become a permanent part of the Marquette jerseys, and they got a number of them. And looking good in all of them as they have brought some fans with them from the Midwest. The Big East extending to the Midwest with the likes of DePaul, Marquette, Cincinnati and Louisville also coming from Conference USA. And Marquette and Louisville really hardly missed a beat coming into the Big East. Tom Crean put this team together. First year for Buzz Williams. Tina with some terrific teams in Louisville, and they have fared just fine, thank you, in the Big East. Offensive foul, Justin Burrell.
Well, you mentioned the Conference USA. In fact, that was the last time Marquette won a conference title in 1997. The only conference title that they've won. You take a look at what they've done in the Big East Championship. they had pretty high hopes for this one. I mean, out there competing among the top 4 until they hit the gauntlet without Dominique James. The gauntlet was the last 5 games that they played, 3 against teams ranked in the top 10, 4 against teams ranked, period. And that's why they're in a 4-game losing streak. Seems like they're about to end that one, unless something miraculous happens as they widen the basket another 18 inches to St. John.
At one end, yeah. Burrell the kick. Evans on the drive, and he slams it home. Terrific play by Sean Evans, the sophomore from Philadelphia. And St. John's has as many field goals this half line as they had in the first half.
Well, as I said, the only thing Norm Roberts could say is the defense wasn't bad. The only thing he could say at halftime was keep shooting.
Matthews off to Hayward. Misses the 3. Rebound St. John's. A promising start, but a huge mountain to climb for the Red Storm. Booth fouled by Acker.
And that was a battle of giants inside. Booth 5'9", and Acker 5'8". Take a look at a nice move there, Sean Evans, and you just wonder again. Little ball fake, drive the baseline using the left hand. You wonder where was all that in the first half.
Booth at the line for a couple. Jimmy Butler will check in now by Marquette. Good move here by Buzz Williams. Jimmy Butler shakes it up when he comes into the game. He did that in the first half with very good results. Dwight Burke will get a breather.
As I mentioned, Dwight Burke gives him the muscle, sets hard screens, rebounds, particularly on the defensive board. But Butler very effective on the glass, particularly the offensive glass. He can give you some points inside, whereas Dwight Burke not as nearly offensive minded.
So nobody taller than 6'6" in the game right now for the Golden Eagles. Hayward called for the offensive foul. Evans takes the charge. 2 on Hayward.
And it was also easy for Marquette pretty much in the first half. They can't lose their mental edge right now. You know, trying to do things a little too quickly. Continue to play within themselves.
Buzz Williams told Alan Hopkins going off the floor at the end of the first half, 20 more minutes to go. He was not willing to take anything for granted. The Red Storm certainly aren't giving any ground. Wide open look. Horn lost it on the way up. And Jarrell McNeil saying, how can he retain that dribble on that play? And he may have a case. Here comes Matthews with a loose ball. Ahead to Hayward. And the follow is missed by Butler. A push on Burrell. Number 4 on Burrell. McNeil is okay. Marquette ball when we come back. And after the break, a championship week update from the studio on the Big 12. All right, John, thank you. Big first half for Dexter Pittman there for the Longhorns as we welcome you back to New York City, where Marquette leads St. John's 40-16. A scary moment in one of the games yesterday, the St. John's game, in fact, as they took on Georgetown. Mike Kitts is the official, and he got knocked by DJ Kennedy. Kennedy inadvertently fell backwards. The back of Kennedy's head hit Kitts in the face, and Kitts was down on the court for several minutes. Kennedy was down for about a minute as well. He got up under his own power, eventually returned to the game. Mike Kitts, we are told, was unconscious briefly down on the floor, suffered a chipped tooth, some facial bruising, but the best news for Mike Kitts, who's a really good guy we've gotten to know over the years, is he is fine and he is expected to work a game here in the tournament tomorrow. So Mike, if you're listening, glad you're all right, and we will see you here at the Garden tomorrow.
Outstanding.
Another miss by Marquette. The Golden Eagles have scored only 2 points here in the second half. Now St. John's has scored only 6, but they are playing better. Kennedy way short, out of bounds to the Golden Eagles.
Again, as I mentioned before, you know, Marquette, and you heard Buzz Williams at halftime talk about ball screens, how well they played them, but St. John's getting open looks. They just seemingly maybe used them up yesterday in that struggle with Georgetown that they ultimately prevailed on.
Booth called for the foul.
St. John's foul is on Malik Booth.
The winner of this game is going to play Villanova in a quarterfinal game tomorrow here at the Garden. Also available as all games the rest of the way in this tournament are on ESPN and ESPN HD. Len and I watched Providence beat DePaul by 9 earlier today, 83-74. They'll play Louisville. The winner of this against Villanova. And then you've got 2 more quarterfinals tonight. Sean McDonough, Bill Raftery, Jay Billis. West Virginia, Notre Dame. And then Seton Hall, Syracuse, with the winners advancing to take on Pittsburgh and UConn, respectively. I want to pull out a Len Elmore stat here. A stat I heard Len Elmore give in a game he did during the regular season. All but 3 baskets that Jimmy Butler has this year have been in the paint. He's got some points at the line, but he's only got 3 field goals all season long that weren't in the painted area.
Well, coming into this game, that was 96% of his points, 151 of 157. And I don't think that's changed much throughout this game. Butler just works that paint so well.
Even though he's giving up size to most of the guys that he's playing against. Evans out of control, and he traveled. Second round action from the Big East Championship at Madison Square Garden. Dan Shulman, Len Elmore, Alan Hopkins, Marquette and St. John's. A dismal first half. A historically bad first half for the Red Storm. Scored only 10 points in the first half. The lowest point total in a half ever in this tournament, which is now in its 30th season. And McNeil banks it home. Marquette seems to be back in gear here after a sluggish beginning to the second half.
Yeah, I mean, you have a tendency, as I said, when it was so easy in the first half to vault out to that lead, guys have a tendency to relax. You know, you got to stay on edge, particularly in championship play.
Booth not backing off an inch despite giving up size to everybody. Gets it back, tries to reverse it, and now McNeil comes up with it, only to lose it to Thomas, who knocks in the floater. Pretty agile play there for a big burly guy. McNeil the kick, and Matthews will pass up the open 3.
And that's a good job of, again, staying within yourselves, recognizing time and spoil. You continue to build this lead. You got advantages all over the place, and there was one of them. Booth trying to guard Lazar Hayward. Marquette spread the floor, found a mismatch, and capitalized.
We were talking about Hayward at halftime. The Big East puts out an all Big East first team, second team, third team, and honorable mention. That was a group of 20 players. Lazar Hayward was not mentioned among those players. That speaks both to the fact that he is still underappreciated and to the incredible depth and quality in this conference, both in terms of the number of teams and the number of great players on those teams.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, it's a guy that shoots 46% from the field, 35% from beyond the arc, 82% among the leaders in free throw percentage. You know, so important. Big game against Pitt, even though they lost. 22 points, 10 rebounds. So he demonstrated he can play in the big games. He's been consistent. I just think that, again, floated under the radar. Didn't even make a blip in the minds of some of the voters.
At 6'6", and he's really not 6'6", 12th in the league in scoring, 9th in the league in rebounding.
Well, he's definitely a workhorse for Marquette. One of those guys, you talk about the so-called big 3. One of those guys very responsible for that success.
Malik Booth getting physical with Maurice Acker and paying the price with a couple of fouls. That was an obvious call there. And a technical foul has been called on St. John's coach Norm Roberts.
Technical foul is charged to the head coach of St. John's, Norm Roberts.
Lazar Hayward will shoot the free throws.
Not so sure what the argument was that Norm could have made on that one.
And maybe frustration starting to seep in now for the Red Storm, both in the fouls by Booth, the technical from Roberts. St. John's, even in games that they've lost this year, Len, more often than not, they have been right in them. They have played hard and they have played well against teams with superior talent.
Yeah, and I've said before, to a man, the coaches in the conference recognize how hard this team plays. They're never out of it. And, you know, they have prevailed on occasion. They've beaten Notre Dame, beaten Georgetown twice.
And you know what just happened? The officials missed the fact it should be 1-1. That the foul by Booth that preceded the technical was the 17 foul. And when Buzz Williams just signaled it should be 1-1. And it looked like the officials were buying it.
Well, it is 18 fouls. I'm curious. So maybe after the technical, it's take the ball to the point of interruption, but it should have been the free throw. They're going to talk about it right now.
Yeah, and Buzz Williams was the guy who pointed this out to the officials, that it should be 1-1 for Marquette.
They got the part about the technical and the point of interruption correctly, but it should have been free throws first.
Yep. After a non-contact technical foul, the kind that was assessed on Norm Roberts, it's point of interruption, which means it reverts to back where the situation was before the technical foul. The foul on Booth should have put Acker at the line, and that's the way they're going to see it.
Take a look right here, and they've been grabbing the shirt. I don't know why Norm got a tech for that one to begin with. Well, that was definitely a grab of the jersey, but with the tech and the foul, because the foul was definitely called. And I think the officials explaining to him right now. And you can correct that.
Good job by Buzz Williams to get his man to the line after the explanation is now given to Norm Roberts. Pretty clear cut. I'm not sure why this is all taking so long.
Because it's an oops moment.
We have oops moments all the time. We just keep going.
Yeah. We don't have the benefit of timeouts, though.
And now Jim Burr over to talk to Norm Roberts, who, as we mentioned in the first half, trying to turn this program around, get it back to the heights it once occupied. Back in the glory days of the mid-'80s, and even more recently than that, they had some good teams in the late '90s and early in this decade. They're at 500. That should be 16-16. 500 right now after the win over Georgetown yesterday. 6-12 in a conference play in the regular season. On the wrong end of a lopsided game right now.
And again, if you look at what Norman's been able to do, they've got 6 wins against ranked teams since he took over in 2004. And, you know, they've been able to rise to the occasion. But once again, hamstrung by the loss of your best player this year, where they had great hopes. Your point guard goes down for significant amounts of time.
Now this should be. This is 1-1 for Acker. And Marquette will get the ball back. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not clear on that. Should have gone back to point of interruption, shoot the 2 for the technical, 1-1. That ball, as far as I'm understanding, should have been in play. I don't understand why Marquette should get it back. But I think at this point we just move on.
I was going to say, you got an oops moment. Yeah. You got to just let it go.
So it's Marquette ball. Into the game for the first time today, Joseph Fultz, a 6'7" sophomore out of Plano, Texas, number 21 for Marquette. Buzz Williams with a big lead, going a little bit deeper, maybe starting to think about games on consecutive days. Tough bank shot for McNeil.
Games on consecutive days as far as resting guys, but also giving some guys on the bench a bit of experience, recognizing he may need them.
Fultz.
Yeah, that was a quick one. Fultz probably looked at the official as well, thinking that he anticipated that call. Guys on the bench unfortunately get victimized like that until they know how you play.
Paris Horn elevates and lays it in. Nice drive.
I mean, you can see the talent there. Paris Horn, as we said, the go-to guy for St. John's right now. 23 points against Georgetown. The talent is there. They just, St. John's, as collectively, just could not find the basket for the longest period of time in the first half. And it kind of grew on itself. Settled down now, but they're so far in the hole, you wouldn't notice.
Kubian with 10 on the shot clock for Marquette. Screen by Burke. The jumper by Kubian is true. It's a long 2 for David Kubian.
And that's the David Kubian we've seen in the past couple of years, particularly under Tom Crean, when Kubian recognized as more of a shooter as opposed to having to have point guard skills.
diminished role this year until he injured James. Got him some minutes back. Kennedy spins into the double team off to Evans. And the big guy's got a soft touch. Second one of those we've seen from him today.
He got a nice handle, too, to get himself in position for that. He was outside right around the elbow or beyond.
Acker is fouled before the shot. A timeout on the floor. Marquette all over St. John's. Our Alan Hopkins will visit with former St. John's coach, the legendary Lou Carnesecca, when we come back to the Garden after this. 1983 was the first year that the Big East Championship was played here at Madison Square Garden, and in the championship game it was St. John's against Boston College. BC's John Garris tried to make a game of it late, but tournament MVP Chris Mullen and the Johnnies too much down the stretch as St. John's beat BC by 8 under head coach Lou Carnesecca to win the Big East Tournament Championship. Coach Carnesecca now standing by with our Alan Hopkins.
Coach Carnesecca, 30th anniversary of the Big East Championship. What are some of your favorite memories?
Well, we have a lot of memories here. I'd say this place, is the Mecca when you think about it. And I can still remember that shot that Ronnie Rowan hit to put us in to win the finals. And of course, Walter Burry came down right here and blocked Earl of Pearl's shot.
Why do you think this championship, this Big East tournament, has been perhaps the best of all the conference tournaments?
First of all, you got some of the greatest traditions teams that have played. A lot of great players, a lot of great coaches that have played here. And when you're playing in this building, you're on Broadway.
What are your thoughts on the job that Norm Roberts is doing in the direction of the St. John's program?
I think Norm is building a nice foundation. We've got to get some more players, build it up, but I think he's doing a good job.
Thanks, Coach. Enjoy the rest of the game. Dan?
All right, Alan, thank you very much. An uphill struggle today for St. John's, but again, the seeds are being planted. They appear to be heading in the right direction. Now, but during the break, I had to satisfy my own curiosity about that last play. So we got J.D. Collins, one of the officials, over. The reason Marquette got the ball back, as we said, it goes back to point of interruption. But point of interruption, the officials deemed, was not the foul. They said when they realized they had made a mistake at the moment of the correction, Marquette had the ball. So that's why they shot the technicals. Then they shot the 1-and-1. But instead of putting the ball in play after the second free throw, Marquette got the ball back because at the point where they realized they made a mistake and they stopped play and they made the correctable, they corrected the situation, Marquette had the ball. So just one of those unusual situations you don't come upon every day.
No, you don't. It's good to have that information in a 30-point game.
And it's good to have the officials share it with us. Make it seem like we might know what we're talking about every now and again.
Yeah. Oh, you maybe. I've been accused of less.
Horn driving on McNeil. Good defense by McNeil. And a good rebound in traffic by Fultz. And then a travel called on McNeil to turn it back over to St. John's.
Oh, talk about playing hard. And, what it comes down to, Malik Booth is not giving anything, leaving anything in doubt. He's still hustling out there, and he forced that turnover. Jerome McNeil not necessarily paying attention. But it's hard to keep your focus when you're up 31.
Blocked by Matthews. No, it's not. The whistle blows, and Jim Burr says it's a foul.
Foul is on Wesley Matthews. That's his second.
Number 2 on Matthews. And Kennedy to the line for St. John's. There are lessons to be learned in games like this for both teams, but thinking of St. John's, I mean, their season, at least this portion of their season, who knows if they will qualify for the NIT. And for those who may be wondering, you no longer need a 500 record to be selected for the NIT. So the Red Storm would be technically eligible, but there are still lessons to be learned in the next 10.5 minutes for this young Red Storm team, right?
Well, it certainly is. And I think that the biggest lesson is you've got to be able to be ready to play back-to-back and win back-to-back games. Only once this season in Big East play have they won back-to-back games. That was beating DePaul at DePaul and then coming back home to beat Georgetown. And that happened late February, early March. But after a big win like yesterday, where they beat their historic rival, it just seemed as though they didn't have anything, at least emotionally, and certainly from the standpoint of making things happen offensively. They came at it hard, but they just couldn't hit an open shot.
They made only 3 field goals in the first half. Burke trapped in the corner, and he'll use a timeout. A 30-point lead for the Golden Eagles on their way to a quarterfinal matchup tomorrow with Villanova. We'll be back to the Garden after this. Welcome back to New York. Is that Snow White? Or
Could be Cinderella.
I don't know.
It's too early for Cinderella.
Our kids are too old for us to remember. 30-point lead for Marquette over St. John's. Let's take a look back at the first game where the number 16 seed, the DePaul Blue Demons, land gave Providence all they could handle for most of the game.
Well, DePaul looked like they were going to be kind of a runaway horse until Providence grabbed the reins and brought it under control. And they used some strong play down the, obviously, Wayme Efajuku, and then right there, Jeff McDermott, to get it under control. And now they have their destiny in front of them. Getting ready to play Louisville. That one more signature win is right before them. The destiny's in their own hands. Even though Keno Davis thinks that even if they lose, they're going to get strong consideration, and they will get strong consideration. They just won't get in unless they win.
What about the night games tonight? West Virginia, Notre Dame, and Syracuse, Seton Hall. What jumps out at you there?
Well, I think the Notre Dame West Virginia game is extraordinarily intriguing. Notre Dame seems to have gotten a little bit of their swagger back, even though it was kind of a struggle against Rutgers, but at least they've got the winning experience. And that, to me, you know, is just one step closer. Notre Dame knows that they've got to win this whole thing to get a bid for the NCAA tournament.
That's the midway point of the second half. Marquette has been in control from the outset. One pull up by McNeil. Two more for Jarrell McNeil as he goes into double figures. Forced it at all today and has had help from Hayward and Matthews. All three of those guys are in double figures already for Marquette. And the Golden Eagles trying to right the ship, pick up a win without Dominique James, their senior point guard, who broke a foot. His Marquette career is over. He is here on crutches. And we're playing part-time assistant coach and part-time head cheerleader right now for the Golden Eagles. It'll drop for DJ Kennedy. James, who has the prestigious first seat on the bench the entire game today. Let's go to Alan Hopkins for more on Dominique James.
I talked to James during warm-up today, and first of all, he's happy to be out of the bed. He's been recovering from surgery, begins his rehabilitation regimen next week. But what he has been doing, as you mentioned, Dan, he's been coaching. He's been really coaching up Maurice Acker, telling him to be himself. He's got plenty of leadership skills inside of him. He's just got to go out, run the team like he always does, as his time has come much quicker than he anticipated running the show here at Marquette, Dan.
Now, I think this team has done a nice job, and I know they've lost the last 4 games, but they've played hard. They've been in them all against ranked opposition. They've done a nice job focusing on what they have as opposed to what they're missing, which is so key.
And you take a look, Dominique James, that's an awful lot to miss over the course of his career. He's been outstanding, really established himself in the annals of Marquette basketball history. But he's right when he tells Maurice Acker to be himself, let the team adjust to who he is. I mean, the one thing about Dominique James, as I mentioned before, he's so athletic that there are certain plays that are run for him that cannot be run for Maurice Acker, things that they rely on, particularly the alley-oop. You know, but Marquette has to adjust to not having those options and maybe establishing some different options. Look at Kubian.
Kubian defending the ball well, the steal, and draws the foul. Ferris Horn called for the foul. Number 4 on Horn.
St. John's foul.
But you got to give some kudos to St. John's. They continue to play hard. And as you mentioned earlier, you know, the criteria for NIT is not necessarily a 500 record. So you talk about impressing a selection committee. St. John's has the ability to impress the selection committee, particularly in the second half here, if they can recover from the clunker they had in the first half.
Well, they had won 4 out of 6 coming into this game today. It never hurts to be a name school. It never hurts that your home arena is this arena where the semis and final of the NIT championship are held.
But you got to give your fans something to be excited about here in the second half. St. John's, knock down some shots. You know, be competitive. It's not just about effort. It's also about some results.
Reach-in foul on Kubian.
The Marquette foul is charged to David Kubian. It's his first, team's 5th.
St. John scored only 10 points in the first half. It was 38-10 at the half, so it's 23-17 for Marquette so far here in the second half. Kubian another steal. He's giving Buzz Williams some good minutes. McNeil Matthews. Vintage Marquette basketball.
We say in transition, they're as good as any team in the Big East and probably in the nation. Once they get out and run, start coming at you, the athleticism, the quickness.
For the Red Storm, 30.
Kubion playing himself into favor with Coach Buzz Williams after only averaging 9 points over the course of the season. There's the steal, the touch pass, the alley-oop. And that's what you like about Marquette in transition. Rarely do they handle it or overhandle it. You know, 1, 2, 3 passes, ball rarely touches the ground.
15 now for Wesley Matthews. He's the high scorer in this game for either team. And he's joined in double figures by Lazar Hayward and Jarrell McNeil.
This is the new big three.
That's right.
Sons, Dominique James. They were at one point the big four, although, as I said, Hayward kind of invisible to a lot of people, it appears, who are voting for all conference.
Kennedy misses the three. Thomas underneath, lays it back up and in. Rob Thomas with his second field goal of the afternoon. St. John's switching defenses, and they're all trying to figure out if they're on the same page right now. They settle into a 1-3-1. Matthews, step back jumper. 17 for Wesley Matthews.
As I mentioned, same thing with Dar Tucker in the first game. You get a 6'5" guard who handles the ball well, can come off that 1-2 bounce dribble, a step back jump shot. You know, their size and their accuracy presents major problems.
Kennedy, nice hesitation, lays it in with the right hand. Nice move by the lefty driving down the lane.
And I think this is a good opportunity for Buzz Williams to get more guys in. Get Jarrell McNeil out of the game. Let him rest his legs. He's huffing and puffing right now.
There will be a tomorrow for Marquette as they will line up in a quarterfinal matchup with Villanova shortly after 2 o'clock Eastern here on ESPN. 3 more for Matthews. He's not huffing and puffing.
Hey, you're never tired when you're knocking him down. Are you kidding me?
20 now. Brings a smile to the face of his teammate and buddy Dominique James. 4 years together for James, McNeil, and Matthews.
Shoot, when you're knocking the ball down, that's better than getting a rest on the bench.
Nice feed from Burrell, and the lay-in by Paris Horn.
How many guys you see give the fist or the "I'm tired" sign after hitting a few?
Never.
You never want to come out when you're scoring. Ask Carmelo Anthony.
That's right. He took it to an extreme.
Yeah.
St. John stays in the zone. Kubion. This is the three. Hayward with the offensive rebound. Under 6 to go and a fresh 35 for the Golden Eagles. And they're in no rush right now.
Well, you know what Kubion's trying to do, obviously continue to play himself into favor, but you got to shoot that jumper behind the college arc, not behind the pro arc.
Hayward, what a strong drive. Right into the chest of Burrell and muscled it up and in.
So he just lowered that shoulder and made enough contact to back Burrell up without creating an offensive foul.
Timeout on the floor with 5:28 to go. Marquette more than doubling up St. John's. The Red Storm in jeopardy of the lowest scoring game in the history of this tournament after putting up the lowest scoring half with only 10 points in the first half today. The Red Storm giving their all, but it's not nearly enough for today as Marquette is on its way to the quarterfinals. Back here at Madison Square Garden, 70-33 Marquette. So you can pretty much pencil them in for a matchup with Villanova tomorrow, Providence and Louisville in the first quarterfinal. 2 more second-round games coming your way tonight here on ESPN. West Virginia against Notre Dame. See how Luke Herringody does, just 7 points in the win over Rutgers last night. And then it's Syracuse and Seton Hall. Now, the Orange, a team that a lot of people are keeping an eye on in this tournament. A very talented and dangerous bunch when the shots are falling for Jim Boeheim's group.
Yeah, but Seton Hall, one of those kinds of teams that can press you and get you playing a lot faster than you want. do some things you may not normally do, and they find a way. As you mentioned before, Jeremy Hazel, one of the more prolific scorers in the Big East. You get some hot hands right there, and they can make it interesting.
You alluded earlier today to which teams could be #1 seeds in the NCAA tournament. And there's a thought that perhaps 3 Big East teams, Louisville, Pittsburgh, Connecticut, could all be #1s. I think Louisville would have to win this tournament for that to happen.
Yeah, I would agree. And, one of the things is that I'm sure they would take a look at the schedule comparatively. Pittsburgh, Connecticut, even though Louisville won the regular season. And it's not Louisville's fault, but they just didn't play the same Big East schedule as both Connecticut and Pittsburgh, in my opinion. But at this point, Louisville with a good chance to win the tournament as well. They can make all of that moot.
Rubion misses the reverse. This ball rebounded back to the Golden Eagles. Right now, would you have Carolina? I think everybody would agree is going to be one. But would you have Oklahoma in there ahead of one of the Big East teams, depending on how things pan out?
Yeah, I would, especially if Oklahoma gets to the finals of the Big 12. I don't even think they need to win it. They get to the finals, and they'll probably wind up matching up against Kansas unless something unforeseen occurs.
Well, as of this morning, our bracketologist Joe Lenardi has 3 Big East teams picking up #1 seeds, and presumably Louisville ranked 4th of those 4. They are headed west.
And remember, Mike Slive, commissioner of the SEC and the Tournament Selection Committee chair, said their focus is on the 3 W's: who you played, where you played, and with whom you played, and then, of course, how you fared. But for Oklahoma, the argument of with whom you played leads to the point that in those critical losses, or apparently critical losses,
2 of the 3, yeah.
2 of the 3, they played without Blake Griffin.
Right.
I mean, I know they lost to Arkansas earlier with Blake Griffin, but I think that's a strong argument to be made that they deserve that kind of consideration.
Do you think there's that big of a difference in this year between a 1 seed and a 2 seed?
Big enough, one, to give people some confidence. Also puts a bigger target on your back than a 2 seed in some ways. But yeah, I mean, I think that you got to win. You got to win, 1 or 2 seed.
Travel on to McNeil, a timeout on the floor. We're into the final 4 minutes here in New York, all Marquette.
Damn.
John, thank you. Marquette on its way to a matchup with Villanova tomorrow in the quarterfinals. Jarrell McNeil didn't force it at all. Had some help from Matthews and Hayward, and has not scored a whole bunch today, but has still had a typical all-around terrific effort.
Yeah, as I said, throughout the season, put up player of the year numbers, 3rd in the conference in scoring, 3-pointers made, 3rd in steals, 10th in 3-point percentage, and 9th in assists. I mean, you start stuffing stat sheets like that at such a high level. Today, they didn't need them. You know, had a little bit of foul trouble, but they didn't need him today. But there's no question about it in my mind. You know, with all due respect to Hashim Thabit, on a consistent basis, this guy showed up and made it happen night in, night out for Marquette.
Robert Frozina, a sophomore from Sherwood, Wisconsin, number 45, into the game for the first time for Marquette. Let's take a look at the Big East All-First team. They put 6 players on it this year. Blair and Thabit sharing player of the year. Luke Herringody, Jarrell McNeil, Terrence Williams, Sam Young. If you had to pick 6, those are the 6. I don't know how you argue anybody else.
They got that right.
Yeah. Herringody, the player of the year last year.
Yeah, I think the thing that hurt Luke Herringody was obviously the performance of his team overall, which is the same thing that boosts Jarrell McNeil, Juwan Blair, and Hashim Thabit.
And there are those who would argue Terrence Williams, those who would argue Sam Young. I had one coach say to me he thought Jeff Adrian should be considered for player of the year in the Big East.
See, now we're entering into the area exactly what is player of the year. I mean, for a lot of these guys, to me, it's the most outstanding player on one of the best teams. I mean, that's why I say I think Luke Herringody lost an awful lot of ground because of the performance of his team. Others think it's basically stats.
Yeah. But
and I think McNeil combines both more than anybody else when you look at his numbers and where he's situated throughout the league.
Had James not gotten hurt, and if Marquette wins a couple of those games, and if they finish 2nd or 3rd instead of 5th in the league, he might have won it.
Yeah, he might have, but I think that's penalizing McNeil for something that, quite honestly, was way beyond his control.
Kubian off to Burke, who missed it, got it back, had it knocked away by Yasalonis.
But Kubian showing a little playmaking capability.
Booth, a little playmaking capabilities. He lobs it up for Kennedy.
And you saw what Malik Booth does, the quickness in transition. That's what St. John's lacked for a long period of time. Not only the 9 games that he missed, but for the period of time it took him to round back into shape, get his timing back.
Buzz Williams is calling timeouts, but he's not taking the 30 seconds. He's just calling to make a substitution and keep it moving here. Marquette will play Villanova in a quarterfinal game tomorrow afternoon here on ESPN. They split during the regular season, each school winning on its own home court.
Yeah, I was there February 10. And I'll tell you what, Villanova couldn't have played better basketball. I mean, knocking down shots, playing defense when they had to at a very fast-paced game. That score is not indicative of the pretty good defense that was played, but certainly it tells you that the offense was at a high level. Both of these teams capable of putting a lot of numbers up very quickly.
There's Atule, number 42, in for Marquette. Set the screen there to free up Kubian. Good hustle to keep it alive. A fresh 35 now for the Golden Eagles.
But that is a game that's going to test Marquette without Dominique James, more his experience than anything else. And in that game, it was a great example of the athleticism of Dominique James. They ran a couple of alley-oops. One of them, he reached back behind his head to throw it down. And at 5'10", that's just unbelievable. Got everybody out of their seats. Maurice Acker, a different player, a little more horizontal. Marquette seems to want to make that adjustment.
Jimmy Butler outside the painted area knocks one down. Well, even with Dante Cunningham having such a great year and being named Big East Most Improved Player, and deservedly so, Villanova rather, still you think of their backcourt just like you do with Marquette. Cunningham and Hayward are both underappreciated, and they've still got Scotty Reynolds and Reggie Redding and Corey Fisher and Corey Stokes. They got a lot of great perimeter players.
Yeah, they got great perimeter players, and they're all interchangeable. I mean, I think one of the key guys for that team is Dwayne Anderson, who allows Jay Wright to play big because Anderson can rebound, and he can also step outside and shoot the 3, and gives Villanova a lot of mismatches to their benefit.
You would guess it's getting out of the 60s. It's going to get.
Yeah, I would think
between
so.
These two teams.
Bring your track shoes, baby.
Ellie Coker throws it out of bounds. Sophomore from Newburgh, New York, to turn it back over to Marquette. Both coaches going deep into their benches here in the last couple of minutes. St. John's got 10 points, scored 10 points in the first half, tripled that here in the second half, but Marquette still extended the lead and will win going away. Much closer game of the first game as DePaul gave Providence all they could handle. The Friars needed a late 15-1 run to beat DePaul 83-74.
Yeah, they had to shed that bubble anxiety because they played like it for 3/4 of that game.
Marquette fans want Frozina, number 45, to put a shot up. Instead, nearly a turnover. Now it is a turnover on a shot clock violation.
That's a shot clock violation. It will be Red Storm ball.
Right now tied for the fewest points ever scored in a Big East championship game. A tournament that goes back 30 years. And they'll stay out of the record books on that count.
And if the St. John's fans hadn't already left, they probably would have stood up and cheered.
2 more games tonight here on ESPN. Notre Dame, West Virginia, Syracuse, Seton Hall. Well, they want him to shoot, but he's not shooting.
He's a team player.
Hey, it's a 31-point game with 15 seconds left. Put a shot up. This is your chance. Turnover. Quincy Roberts lays it in. So St. John's will fall to 16-17, and again still technically eligible for an NIT, but you don't need to be 500 anymore. Seems like a bit of a long shot, but you never know. Marquette will advance to a quarterfinal game with Villanova tomorrow at 2 o'clock Eastern here on ESPN and ESPN HD. 20 for Matthews, 17 for Hayward. Great defense by Marquette. And looking forward to tomorrow's game between the Golden Eagles and the Wildcats in what should be an up and down affair between two teams that like to get out and run. So we are down to 10 teams still alive here for the Big East Championship, with Providence and Marquette advancing. DePaul and St. John's being eliminated. 2 more teams will fall by the wayside tonight as the Mountaineers take on the Irish, and the Orange battle the Pirates. The final score again here from Madison Square Garden: Marquette 74 and St. John's 45. Coming up next year on ESPN, Jim Rome is burning. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. For Len Elmore, Alan Hopkins, and our entire ESPN crew, I'm Dan Schulman, thanking you for watching and saying, don't forget to tune in tonight. 2 more great games coming your way from the Garden. For now, so long from New York.